clerk will read out the names.
Welcome to Parliament and Governance here on Independent Television. We appreciate you joining us. A lot continues to happen in the politics of Nigeria, including as it has to do with legislation. In 2019, for example, almost 2 years down the line now, Nigerians went to the polls amongst other category of elections. One of the things that happened was to elect people to represent them at the local, states, and federal levels, especially states and federal levels. Most times when we talk about representation, the attention goes to the House of Reps and the Senate. But overall, we're looking at what the quality, ideally, everything else being equal, what the quality of representation should be. If I say I have someone representing me, representing my constituency at the House of Representatives, for example, what should I expect from him? What should be his role in ensuring that he takes that constituency from one level of development to a much higher one? If I have a senator, for instance, of course, each state has 3 senators, what should be his role in developing his senatorial districts? It will appear that there's a disconnect, for the most part in this country, between those represented and the persons who represent them. How do we establish a convergence in such a way that there's a fusion, a two-way traffic as they call it, between those being represented and those persons who have the responsibility of representing them? We want to look at this issue on the program today, and we're back shortly to help you make sense of it all. My guest today on the program is Honorable Fred Uyigwe. He's a politician as well as an economist. Thank you, Fred, for always obliging us your time to talk to us on this program.
Thank you for having me.
I want us to talk about representation, right? People elect some persons to go represent them, and naturally there's an expectation as to what should happen on account of that representation. Most persons try to do an assessment, try to do an evaluation of those who represent them and the quality of the representation that they get from these people. And in the middle of it, you're scratching your head and you're asking yourself, what should be the KPIs, that is, what should be the key performance indicators of a legislator who is performing or one who isn't?
Well, we have to consider what their manifestos were when they campaigned for office. On what manifesto did they run? Anybody running for an office presents an agenda, a manifesto as it were, to the electorate for consideration and campaigns based on that manifesto. But also during the service as a representative of a constituency, there could be other exigent matters that may arise. So the legislator or the representative has to be able to juggle the agenda that he put forth at the time of campaign with the other exigent matters that may arise during the period. Every representative should be able to multitask, you know, and then also to prioritize. But there should be an active communication between the representative and his constituency. The other name, a more appropriate name actually, for democracy is representative government. Okay, and it's referred to as government of the majority. So these, in understanding these definitions, then we are able to better assess what to expect from the representatives and draw up parameters by which their performance can be assessed. Okay, we must be grateful for the times that we are in, because communication has become much easier than it used to be. Now we have electronic platforms, we have social media, and we have other electronic broadcasting services. Not too long ago, in our own time, I saw until I was maybe 12 years old. There was no TV in the city, I mean this very city. So not until 1973 did we have a TV station and was able to see what was going on. But if we had even known that we could raise up our antenna at the time, we would have been able to be viewing the station at Ibadan, which will come in as hazy but no sound and everything. But it would have been better than nothing until we got that. So from that time till now, there has been so much progress, it's unbelievable. You know, it took a much longer time to progress to when we first acquired such service. So during this period now, there is the opportunity for the representative to communicate, a much higher opportunity to communicate with his constituencies. So if the electorate or the people of his constituency, members of his constituency, believe that there is a deficit of performance on the part of their representative, then they should be able to bring it to their attention. But where there are no consequences, then it becomes difficult to hold them to account. Okay? In very many climes, political climes, they have a provision by which you can, for example, recall a representative who is not performing.
Yeah.
Because a non-performing representative is like an absentee representative.
It becomes more of a liability.
Yes, it's a liability all the way, not an asset at all, because he's there to look at the total view of the larger constituency. Okay, that's talking now about like the national representatives, the senators and House of Rep members. Okay, they are there to contribute to the national outlook and national issues, craft policy issues and all of that for the nation. But they should be able to bring into bear their own peculiar constituencies' interests, because that is why they have been represented. That is why they have been elected to represent their constituencies. To be able to bring to the table the interest of the constituencies and how policies drafted at the center may impact upon their constituencies, so that those who are remotely removed from such constituencies are not totally at a loss, or are not sensitive enough to the peculiarities of such constituencies.
I'll tell you why I asked that question. I mean, for many Nigerians, the range of responsibilities for an average representative, especially at the federal level, is to maybe sink a borehole. What else? Put up skills acquisition initiatives. Once in a while, renovate old schools, maybe healthcare facility. I mean, at the local level, and so on and so forth. Is there anything beyond that for the representative, really?
Of course, a robust representation actually demands the ability to harness ideas, okay, that can be put together to impact on the challenges of the times. Okay, so to be able to do that, every representative actually does need a retinue of advisors. Okay, they don't have to always be paid advisors. They could be or permanent advisors. They could be part-time advisors, consultants, people you consult concerning issues of particular interests or professions, for example. If a representative has a couple of doctors, say a couple of GPs, general practitioners, that he consults in instances of medical health, then he is better informed and better able to contribute to the development of policies that will affect such need or challenge. So we have to have representatives who understand this and who are also able to draw up parameters of assessment. Okay? Civil societies, they have a very strong role to play. And we must commend those who are actually participating in civil society activities. Because, like here in Nigeria, their work is daunting. It's just so much. There's so much going on. And then funding, it's not easy.
Yeah.
You know? So it is really a matter of serious sacrifice on their part. But their role has to be commended, because they draw up these parameters. They have their own parameters, okay, for assessing performance by legislators. It's something that can always be added to. Depends on the reach and exposure of the people you're consulting.
Yeah.
Okay. The representative too has a responsibility to be able to assess himself or herself. Okay. And in doing that, you also have to draw up checklists of things that are expected of you, things you're supposed to do. And those should be matched with milestones. Okay? I ought to be able to accomplish such and such within this. And match that with the manifesto that they presented. So there's a lot of juggling to be done, a lot of work to be done. But when it is robust, then the performance will show. You know, a good performance will show.
Okay, let's just before we hit a break now, in 2 minutes, let's look at something. There's an irony.
Okay.
You hear legislators say it is not the role of a lawmaker, who, of course, we understand naturally, his first line of duty is to make laws for the purpose of good governance. Ought not to have any business citing projects, for instance. Some people say that's a political statement. They only get to make that statement when the chips are down. And then the same lawmaker who says, well, my role is to make laws and not to cite projects, begins to cite projects. You begin to see boreholes with names of legislators printed on them. You begin to see some pockets of projects here and there by these same legislators. What should be the ideal practice?
Well, our legislators, over this period that we have initiated this dispensation, this democratic dispensation,
Right.
have come to the conclusion that the electorate are not able to assess their contribution because it is remote, or it seems remote from them, unless they are able to see visibly their impact in their constituencies by initiating projects, and so have canvassed for allocation to support their constituency projects demands, which really ought not to be. The executive is best placed, and that is why it is reposed with that responsibility to undertake all projects on behalf of the government, because they have specialized departments responsible for all manners of projects, and then they have professionals within those departments who are able to better execute such projects. That is why it's called the executive. For the legislators, they should be able to convey their performance to their constituencies based on what they know that they have actually contributed by different avenues. For example, bulletins, legislative journals. If a government, say a local government, were to have a legislative journal that is accessible to the people of the constituency, then they can see what goes on, what they are doing. And now, thank God that we now have electronic media. We now have internet.
Yeah.
So they can actually. It doesn't have to cost as much as it would have been using print media. So you have a website for each government. Each local government ought to have a website. Okay, and each of the websites ought to be subdivided into different categories.
Right.
Okay, so that the legislative performance, legislative activities of a particular local government will be featured within that website. So anybody who is interested in knowing the level of activities or what is going on within the local government can go there and access it and read for himself or herself. That is on a passive note. You go, you assess. But on an active note, the legislator has the responsibility of reaching out to the people, to interact with them, to make sure it's able to get feedback on his performance. Okay, and also to update the demands of the people, because the demands of the people and the challenges of any society is dynamic.
Right.
Okay, so it's not static. So there is a need for continuous interaction and feedback.
Let's take a break quickly, everyone. At this point, Freddie Igwe has been helping us to make sense of this discussion as it has to do with non-performance by legislators at whatever level. We're taking a quick break now. We'll push it a bit further just in a moment. Stay with me. So just a while ago, you talked about the fact that there's the possibility of recall. I'm going to come to that in a moment. But first, let's just talk again for about 2-3 minutes concerning the issue of constituency projects. Some persons have argued that it makes it easier for legislators to miss the mark, because it makes them forget where they should be, what they should be doing. Because it's interesting how legislators are pursuing how to deliver tricycles, popularly called keke napep, for example, how to deliver milling machines and so on and so forth, rather than, face squarely the business of making law. And today we're hearing things about constituency projects of different amounts being made available or being allocated to these legislators. And people are still asking, is there a balance between the projects being cited and whatever monies have been allocated? Does that give you concern?
Of course, it should give us concern. Like I said earlier, the executive is the executive branch of government. Is the branch of government that is charged with executing projects and enforcing the law. Okay, so when the legislative branch of government takes on the role of the executive, takes on the responsibility of the executive, it is bound to do it to execute such projects less efficiently.
Right.
Okay, and whenever you get a less efficient execution of projects, you lose something out of it.
Let me just push one more question further along that line. There are people who are now saying that we should do part-time legislation as against the full-time, quote and unquote, that we are currently practicing. What has been your argument?
I believe that legislative business is full-time.
Okay.
Okay. And I say that because of the magnitude of the problem, the magnitude of challenges of every society. Okay. We have, I don't know anybody that hopes to excel conducting his business on a part-time basis. Okay. Once you open shop to undertake business, you want to be there, you want to be committed.
Yeah.
The employees come in, some for 8 hours, some for 10, 12 hours a day. But the owners, the proprietors of the businesses, they spend many more hours.
Right.
Even after the business doors, front doors close, they are there, trying to catch up, trying to review what has been done, and trying to plan ahead. That is the same role that our legislators and executives have to undertake on our behalf.
Right.
Okay. What are you going to call a part-time legislative business, for example? Legislative business doesn't start and stop with debates on the floor of the legislative chambers. Okay. It includes going back, relating with the electorate, and researching solutions to challenges. So it's almost a 24-hour business, save for time that you have to now. That is why you even see that in some cases you find that some legislators may seem at a loss as to certain information that they ought to ordinarily be aware of.
Yes.
That's because the very magnitude of the responsibility is so huge that you cannot keep abreast with everything. Okay? And that is why you find many of them exhausted. The ones who are really working hard to serve the people would exhaust themselves just doing it. And when we now come to say that they should perform that job on a part-time basis, we are not doing it because we believe that we'll be helping ourselves. Okay? We're doing it to our own detriment if we have to do that.
My fear is always that we have limited time to have this kind of discussion, but there's something else I want to ask you quickly. Recall, we really have not seen that work here. We tried it once. I mean, people from Kogi West Senatorial District tried it with Dino Melaye, who at the time was representing that district at the Senate. A lot of persons said, look, this was instigated by some political interest or undertone or whatever it was at that time. Does it make sense that we couldn't see people who were dispassionate about their assessments of the situation at the time? Because you're now wondering and asking yourself, if we're to have a move tomorrow to record a representative, whether at the House of Representatives or at the Senate, are we not still going to say, well, it was Fred Uigwe's idea for us to recall him, not because the man was not performing? So at what point can we all be on the same page as to recalling a member of House of Representatives, for instance, or a senator?
It would be utopian to think that we can at any point all be on the same page. You know?
But can we find some consensus, some common grounds, for instance? Even
when we agree, there are mitigating factors. Okay, you know, these personal relationship things. You are in a constituency, and then because of your personal relationship, you have to recuse yourself from contributing to challenging those who are supposed to be serving the people. Okay. If you do not do that, you are seen as an enemy. What needs to happen, actually, is that we should continue to attempt to recall those that
where necessary.
Yes, where necessary, of course. Those that are seen not to be performing. At some point, the electorate will come to understand that, yes, there is a consequence for non-performance.
Yeah.
And then the representatives themselves too, we know that there's a consequence for non-performance. So it will ginger them to work better for the people, and it will give the electorate a sense of power over their representatives.
So to say they can recall when there's little or no performance,
when
for
there's
instance.
no performance.
Fred Uigwe, as I said earlier, I'm afraid that this is the modern time will allow us to talk about this issue. But again...
But let me just quickly touch on this one aspect you talked about. Our legislators need to be more, not legislators actually,
politicians generally.
Our politicians need to be more creative about what they can do for the people.
Beyond the regulars that we have seen.
Beyond just sinking boreholes and digging gutters and all of that, constructing gutters.
Okay. Hopefully we can do more than desilting gutters, for instance, and solar street lighting system, for example. Okay, that's the much we're talking about on this issue for this week. Thank you so much, Honorable Fred Uigwe, politician and economist, for coming to help us shed light on this very topical issue. That's our program for this week. Thank you, everyone, for watching. I'm Uyag Mofwegwe. Our coverage here on ITV continues. Enjoy the rest of your evening.